The stars that once gleamed peacefully in the quiet expanse of space now seemed to flicker with urgency and chaos. Across the galaxy, an unstoppable storm was brewing. The Exerthans, an alien race known for their ruthless violence, had set their sights on a once peaceful world. Their ships filled the sky, blotting out the stars. Planets trembled beneath the weight of their invasion. The planet they attacked, a small but thriving world known as Caloria, was home to an advanced race of beings with technology far beyond anything humanity could imagine. The Calorians had lived for centuries in peace, their cities filled with towering structures, advanced AI, and weapons capable of tearing through entire fleets. But despite their high-tech superiority, they were helpless against the Exerthans' sheer numbers. The Exerthans did not fight with honor. They fought with overwhelming force, using brutality as their primary weapon. Their soldiers, a monstrous breed of bioengineered warriors, seemed endless. The Calorians' once impenetrable defenses crumbled beneath the might of the Exerthan fleet. In the heart of the Calorian capital, high above the planet's surface, the ruling council gathered in a high-tech war room, a large transparent screen showing the bleak situation outside. Desperation was beginning to settle over them like a dark cloud. They had sent their most skilled warriors to the front lines, and even their highly advanced AI systems seemed to be struggling against the relentless assault. And yet, the Exerthans were still coming. The Calorian Council knew they were close to losing everything. Their planet was slipping away from them, their once glorious empire threatened by the very forces they had underestimated. In a final desperate move, the Council decided to broadcast a message, a call for help that echoed across the galaxy. To any who hear this, the message began, "We are the Calorian people. Our planet is under siege by the Exerthan Empire. We have fought valiantly, but our forces are no match for their numbers. We need help. We need assistance from the only race capable of turning the tide, the humans." At first, the Calorians hesitated to send such a message. Humans were seen as primitive, even weak by many alien civilizations. They were a young species, their technology nowhere near as advanced as that of the Calorians or the Exerthans. To the Calorians, the very thought of relying on humans felt like an insult to their superiority. But desperation had left them with little choice. The Exerthans had attacked with no warning, and their assault on Caloria was swift and merciless. The Calorians had always thought they were untouchable, but they had never faced an enemy quite like the Exerthans. Now, they were fighting for their survival. The message was sent out in all directions, across the vastness of space, hoping that someone, anyone, would answer the call. But the truth was, most races in the galaxy had long ago written off humanity as a primitive species, too chaotic and disorganized to be of any use in such a dire conflict. The Calorians themselves had barely tolerated humans, always dismissing them as insignificant. But now, in the face of annihilation, they had no other choice. As the Calorian message sent out across the stars, no one knew if it would reach anyone at all. It was a gamble, and time was running out. In the deep silence of space, there was a shift in the cosmic balance. On Earth, light years away from the conflict, something stirred. Across the globe, humans were not prepared for a galactic war, yet they were about to be thrust into one. The human race had always been underestimated by the galactic civilizations. They had been mocked for their chaotic world, for their wars, their history of strife. But there was more to humanity than the galaxy knew. Humans had always fought for survival, for their freedom, and most importantly, they never backed down from a challenge. They had for years been secretly developing their own technologies so advanced they could rival the best and brightest alien minds. Deep in underground facilities, far away from prying eyes, the humans had been preparing for a day like this. A day when they would be forced to fight for their survival, not just against other humans, but against the overwhelming powers of the galaxy. For years, humans had been experimenting with biotechnology, genetic engineering, and warfare. They had developed soldiers who could cloak themselves, disappearing into thin air, and weapons that could kill with a single strike. But most remarkable of all were their venomous task forces. These soldiers were genetically altered, their bodies enhanced with deadly toxins. These venomous super soldiers were designed to be the ultimate weapon, able to kill with a single touch. Their bodies produced venomous substances so powerful that even the most advanced alien species would have no defense against them. It was these soldiers that the Calorians were calling upon, and they had no idea what they were about to unleash. Back on Earth, the call for help had been received, and the human response was swift. A task force, consisting of the best and brightest from the human military, was mobilized within hours. Leading the charge was Lieutenant Marcus Kane, a man with a reputation for never failing a mission. His team of venomous soldiers, including Captain Emily Stone and Sergeant Jackson Reed, was ready for anything. The humans didn't hesitate. They knew that the future of the galaxy was at stake, and they had no choice but to fight. As they prepared for the journey to Caloria, the venomous task force gathered in the command center, waiting for the order to launch. The Calorians were about to see the true power of humanity. As the human fleet made its way across space, the Calorians could hardly believe their eyes when they saw the human ships approach. These ships weren't massive or overwhelming in size, but they were sleek, advanced, and mysterious. The humans had designed them with the very latest in cloaking technology, allowing them to disappear from sight at will. The Calorians could hardly detect them on their scanners. At the forefront of the fleet was a vessel that stood out among the rest, a ship designed specifically for the venomous task force. It was a compact, heavily armored ship with cloaking technology that made it nearly invisible to the naked eye. Inside, Lieutenant Marcus Kane and his team were preparing for the mission. As the task force prepared for battle, the Calorians couldn't help but stare in awe. These humans, whom they had dismissed as inferior, were not only technologically advanced, they were ready to fight, and they were determined to win. When the time came, Lieutenant Kane gave the signal. "Let's make it count," he said, his voice steady and confident. With a flick of a switch, the humans' cloaking devices engaged, and the ships disappeared from view. The battle had begun. The Calorians, still in shock, watched as the humans' venomous task force silently descended upon the Xertham positions, undetected and ready to strike. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. These primitive humans, who they had once thought of as nothing more than an annoyance, were now their only hope. And as the first strike was made, a wave of surprise washed over the Calorians. They had never seen anything like this before. The humans were unstoppable, and the Xerthons were about to face the ultimate challenge, one they never expected. The quiet hum of the human fleet's engines was the only sound as they neared the Xerthon stronghold. The once quiet planet, now caught in the throes of war, appeared as nothing more than a battlefield from space. The Xerthons had taken over strategic points on Caloria, their warships and soldiers scattered across the surface, unaware of the silent threat descending upon them. Inside the lead ship, Lieutenant Marcus Kane stood by the command console. His eyes narrowed as the holographic map of the planet's surface glowed in front of him. The mission was clear. Strike fast. Strike hard. Strike without warning. Time to show them what we're made of, Marcus muttered to himself. Beside him, Captain Emily Stone checked her gear. Her task force, the venomous task force, had been ready for this moment. They were humanity's last hope, armed with bioengineered weapons so deadly, even the most advanced alien technology would struggle to stop them. Each soldier was equipped with a cloaking device designed for stealth. With a single command, they could vanish from sight. The Xerthons had no idea what was coming. And that was the point. The team was ready. The strike would begin in less than 5 minutes. Marcus glanced at his team. His most trusted soldiers were with him, Captain Stone, Sergeant Reed, and Bonner. Each one was exceptional in their own way, but it was Bonner who stood out. A former soldier turned scientist, Bonner had played a key role in developing the venomous weapons they now relied on. His face, usually calm, was tight with the anticipation of the mission ahead. "Remember, we hit hard and fast. We disable their key structures, and we don't leave a trace," Marcus said, his voice steady but intense. The team nodded, checking their weapons one last time. These weren't regular guns. They were venomous weapons, the result of years of human genetic engineering. When fired, the weapons released a powerful biotoxin that attacked the Xerthans' biological systems, shutting them down in seconds. The result was chaos. The Xerthans were fast, strong, and brutal, but their biology was no match for the venomous weapons designed specifically to take them down. The countdown began, and one by one, the soldiers activated their cloaking devices. The last thing they saw before vanishing was the steady, calm expression of Lieutenant Marcus Kane. Then, the world around them went quiet. Marcus was the first to go. The moment his cloaking device activated, he disappeared. There was no sound, no flash, just a sudden absence. It was as if he had never been there. His footsteps no longer echoed on the ship's metallic floor. The team followed suit, slipping into invisibility. They moved silently through the corridors, passing through doors and hallways with ease, undetected. Outside, the Xerthan stronghold was unaware of the human threat. Their soldiers patrolled the perimeter, unaware of the danger approaching. The humans, cloaked and invisible, were ready to strike. In the distance, a lone Xerthan sentry stood guard near the entrance of a facility. He was large and imposing, his alien features twisted in a permanent sneer. He gripped his weapon tightly, scanning the surroundings with sharp eyes. He had no idea what was about to happen. Marcus was the first to make his move. He appeared behind the sentry in a flash, his cloaked form silently emerging from the shadows. With a swift motion, he reached out and pressed a venomous dart into the sentry's neck. The sentry didn't even have time to react. Within seconds, his body began to convulse. His eyes widened as the venom coursed through his system, and before he could raise his weapon, he collapsed to the ground, dead. It was fast, efficient, deadly. The rest of the team moved in immediately, infiltrating the Xerthan stronghold one by one. Sergeant Reed took down another sentry, using the same technique, swift, silent, and lethal. Captain Stone moved ahead, cutting off the escape routes, ensuring no Xerthans could flee or raise the alarm. But as the humans made their way deeper into the stronghold, things took an unexpected turn. A loud, echoing noise suddenly reverberated through the hallways, a faint click followed by a low growl. The trap had been set. Bonner, who had been one step behind the others, felt something shift in the air. His instincts kicked in. He knew something wasn't right. He turned just in time to see a shadow move across the walls. A Xerthan ambush. Dozens of Xerthan soldiers sprang from the shadows, their weapons raised and ready. The humans were still cloaked, but the element of surprise had been lost. The Xerthans had anticipated their move. Bonner was the first to react. He dove behind cover, drawing his venomous weapon, but before he could fire, a bright flash of light exploded next to him. He was hit. The pain was immediate and intense. Bonner's body shuddered as the venomous toxin coursed through his veins. His vision blurred, and his breath came in shallow gasps. But despite the pain, he fought to stay conscious. He needed to keep fighting. The Xerthans were closing in, and Bonner was pinned down. He fired his weapon, releasing another dart into the nearest Xerthan soldier. The soldier dropped, but it wasn't enough. Bonner was outnumbered, and his strength was fading fast. Marcus, hearing the commotion, activated his cloaking device and appeared in an instant. But by the time he reached Bonner, it was too late. Bonner, his face pale and strained, looked up at his commanding officer with a weak smile. "Tell the others. I did my part," he whispered. Tears welled up in Marcus's eyes as he looked down at his friend, his comrade. Bonner had been a part of this team for years, and now he was gone. But the mission didn't stop. Marcus stood tall, his anger burning brighter than ever. His best friend was dead, but he couldn't mourn just yet. The Exerthans had killed Bonner, and they would pay for it. "Take them down," Marcus ordered, his voice cold and filled with determination. "We finish this." The venomous task force surged forward. Now, it wasn't just about winning. It was about vengeance. The team fought with a fury that had been ignited by the loss of one of their own. Each member was determined to make the Exerthans pay for what they had done. In the chaos that followed, the humans struck like shadows, their cloaked forms picking off the Exerthan soldiers one by one. The venomous task force had been pushed to the brink, but now they were unstoppable. The Exerthans had underestimated humanity once again, and they would pay the price. The Calorian Command Center was buzzing with activity, but the tension in the air was palpable. On the screen, human soldiers, cloaked and swift, had already taken down hundreds of Exerthan soldiers with ease. The live feed from the battlefield flickered as Calorian generals watched in disbelief. How was this possible? The Calorians were a race known for their superior technology and their almost godlike control over advanced warfare tactics. They had built weapons that could destroy planets and ships that could break through the toughest of shields. And yet, here they were, helpless as the humans, whom they had once considered primitive and weak, were dismantling the Exerthan invasion with alarming efficiency. They're actually doing it," General Walter muttered, his eyes wide. Beside him, Admiral Lyra stared at the same screen. Her face was unreadable, but her clenched fists revealed her doubt. "I don't understand," she said. "They're not using the same strategies as we would. They're more aggressive, more personal." Calorian technology had always been about precision, control, and overwhelming firepower, but what they saw in the humans' tactics was something entirely different. It was raw, driven by something beyond strategy. There was an intensity in their fighting that the Calorians had never seen before, a burning passion that transcended battle tactics. Lieutenant Marcus Kane stood at the forefront of the human assault. His face was hardened, his eyes cold as he observed the devastation around him. The Exerthan forces, who had once been so sure of their victory, were now on the back foot, reeling from the relentless strikes delivered by the humans. But Marcus knew this wasn't over yet. He had seen what the Exerthans were capable of, and he understood that their mothership, their symbol of power, was still operational. The Exerthans weren't defeated. They were desperate, and desperate enemies were dangerous. "Commander," Captain Stone's voice broke through the tension. "We've hit their front line. It's time to take the next step, the mothership." Marcus nodded. "Prepare the orbital bombardment. We're going to hit them where it hurts." The Calorians had been watching this unfold from their observation stations, and their doubts began to grow. They had seen the humans' venomous task force fight with unrelenting fervor, but they hadn't seen the true extent of what the humans were capable of, until now. The signal for the orbital bombardment was given. A series of human warships launched in unison, their weapons primed for the strike. From the Calorian Command Center, the Calorians watched as the skies above the Exerthan mothership erupted in flames. Explosions lit up the darkness, one after another, as human warships unleashed their payload. The sheer intensity of the bombardment shook the very atmosphere. Each explosion illuminated the night sky like a fiery beacon. The Exerthan mothership trembled under the barrage, its shields flickering and failing as the human assault grew fiercer. For the Calorians, this was a revelation. They had always relied on long-range precision and massive firepower. Yet these humans didn't hesitate. They brought everything to bear. Every weapon they had, every ship, every piece of technology, and launched it at the heart of the Exerthan forces. They were using their full might, not holding anything back. "By the stars," General Walter whispered, "they're not holding back at all." Admiral Lyra's gaze remained fixed on the screen. She couldn't tear her eyes away from the humans' fierce assault. She had seen battle before, but there was something different about how they fought. The humans were driven by a force she couldn't explain. This wasn't just a military operation for them. It was personal. They were fighting for something greater. On the ground, the human soldiers continued their attack. Lieutenant Marcus Kane moved through the battlefield with precision, guiding his team through the chaos. They were like a well-oiled machine, striking with deadly accuracy and speed. The Exerthans had underestimated them, and now they were paying the price. But it wasn't just the human technology or tactics that had impressed the Calorians. It was the passion behind their every move. The humans fought with a level of desperation and determination that could only come from a people who had been pushed to the brink of extinction. The Exerthans had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated humanity. As the humans continued their fight, a loud crash echoed through the battlefield. The Exerthan mothership had finally taken a direct hit. Its shields had failed, and the ship's main reactor exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The blast sent shockwaves rippling across the battlefield. The Calorians watched in awe as the human warships pulled back, their mission accomplished. For a moment, there was silence. The Calorians had never seen anything like it. They had witnessed the destruction of a major Exerthan asset, and yet it was the humans who were standing victorious. The Exerthans, once seen as an unstoppable force, were now reeling. The humans had turned the tide. General Valter's expression softened, and he looked over at Admiral Lyra. "I think we may have underestimated them," he said quietly. Admiral Lyra nodded slowly. "Yes, we did. And now we see the truth. The humans had proven that they were not the underdogs. They were a force to be reckoned with." Meanwhile, Lieutenant Marcus Kane stood atop the wreckage of the Exerthan mothership. His team gathered around him. The battle wasn't over, but they had won a significant victory. The Exerthans had been thrown into disarray, and humanity had earned the respect of the Calorians, even if they weren't ready to admit it yet. "We've shown them what we're capable of," Marcus said, his voice steady but filled with pride. "But we're not done yet. The Exerthans have to be eradicated. All of them." Captain Stone looked at him, her eyes filled with determination. "We'll finish it, sir." As the humans prepared for the next phase of the assault, the Calorians continued to watch in awe. They were beginning to realize that humanity was not just their ally. They might just be their salvation. The Calorians had once believed they were the galaxy's greatest power, but now they were starting to see that humanity, a race they had once dismissed as weak and primitive, was the true force to be reckoned with. The humans were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting to protect the entire galaxy. And as the battle raged on, the Calorians' doubts slowly turned to respect. They watched as the humans, with their advanced biotech, venomous weapons, and unwavering resolve, tore through the Exerthans with the kind of fury that could change the course of the war. In the end, the Calorians knew one thing for sure. The humans were not the underdogs anymore. They were the predators, and the Exerthans were their prey. The sky above the battlefield was alive with flashes of light and the sound of war. The Exerthans, once so confident in their technological superiority, were now on the retreat. Their once unstoppable invasion force was faltering, and the humans, along with their new allies, the Calorians, were making sure the Exerthans felt the full force of their combined might. On the ground, Lieutenant Marcus Kane led the charge, his cloaking device making him nearly invisible as he darted between cover. His team, the Venomous Task Force, moved with deadly precision. They were no longer just soldiers. They were hunters, predators who had tasted the thrill of victory. Their venomous weapons, bioengineered toxins capable of disabling the Exerthans' biological systems, were tearing through their enemies with horrifying efficiency. But this wasn't just about firepower. This was about strategy. As Marcus issued commands, the human soldiers fought with a newfound unity and determination. They had become more than just a military force. They were a family, bound by the shared loss of comrades and the relentless drive to avenge those they had lost. The Exerthans were no longer confident. Their leaders had believed that their technology would crush humanity and the Calorians, but they had underestimated one key thing: human resilience. That Exerthon's arrogance had blinded them to the truth. Now, as the human forces and their Calorian allies made their coordinated strike, the Exerthons were scrambling, trying to regroup but failing at every turn. Back on the ground, Lieutenant Marcus Kane's comms were filled with updates. His soldiers were taking heavy casualties, but they were pushing forward, fueled by the memory of those who had already fallen. Bonner, one of Marcus's closest companions, had already sacrificed himself in a desperate attempt to gather critical intelligence. His death had not been in vain, though. Bonner had given his life to provide a piece of information that would become the key to the humans' final assault. It had been a close call. Bonner's squad had been pinned down by a surprise Xerthon ambush. Despite their superior training and technology, the Xerthon's sheer numbers had overwhelmed them. But Bonner, ever the fighter, had managed to crawl through the chaos, collecting vital intel that would give the humans the edge they needed to end the battle. With his dying breath, Bonner had transmitted the data to Lieutenant Marcus. It was a blueprint, a plan that would guide them to the Xerthon mothership and allow them to launch a final assault that would destroy the invaders once and for all. Bonner's sacrifice had given the humans the hope they needed to finish what they had started. As Marcus looked around the battlefield, he felt a deep sense of loss. Bonner had been a friend, a brother in arms. His death had left a hole in their ranks, but it had also ignited a fire within the remaining soldiers. They had lost many, but they had gained something far more important: the will to fight, not just for survival, but for vengeance. Bonner's sacrifice won't be in vain, Marcus said through gritted teeth as he looked over the battlefield. We finished this. For him. The venomous task force pressed on, taking down the remaining Xerthon forces with deadly precision. The humans' cloaking devices allowed them to strike from the shadows, hitting hard and fast. The Xerthons, who had once been so sure of their victory, were now retreating in disarray. They had no choice but to fight for their lives, but their arrogance had caught up with them. On the Calorian side, the fighter ships continued to soar through the air, engaging in fierce dogfights with the remaining Xerthon ships. The Calorians' advanced weaponry ripped through the Xerthon fighters with ease, but their pilots were beginning to feel the toll of the prolonged battle. Still, they pushed forward, driven by the hope that the humans could deliver the final blow. The Xerthons, now cornered and desperate, made one last attempt to turn the tide. Their remaining warships launched a final offensive, charging straight toward the human and Calorian forces. It was a suicidal move, but the Xerthons had nothing left to lose. They had been beaten back at every turn, and now they were willing to throw everything they had into one last gamble. The human soldiers, however, had been prepared for this. Lieutenant Marcus had anticipated the Xerthons' last-ditch effort and had prepared his forces accordingly. The venomous task force, along with the Calorians' aerial support, launched a coordinated strike that decimated the remaining Xerthon ships. The battle was coming to an end, and the humans were victorious. The Xerthon mothership, already weakened by the orbital bombardment, was now exposed. Marcus gave the order for the final strike, and a barrage of missiles shot toward the heart of the enemy ship. It took only moments for the missiles to hit their target. The resulting explosion shook the ground, and a massive fireball erupted in the sky. The Xerthons had been defeated. But even in victory, there was a sense of loss. Bonner's sacrifice had been the turning point, but his death had left a permanent scar on the human forces. The remaining soldiers stood in silence, honoring their fallen comrade, even as they celebrated their victory. Lieutenant Marcus Kane stood at the forefront, watching as the last of the Xerthon forces were either destroyed or fled. His face was tired, worn, but there was a glimmer of pride in his eyes. The battle was over, and humanity had emerged victorious. But the cost had been high. He looked up at the sky, where the last of the Xerthon ships were falling from the sky. "We did it," Captain Stone said, her voice filled with emotion. "Yes, we did," Marcus replied, his voice steady. But we did it for all of them. For Bonner. For everyone we lost. As the battle drew to a close, the human forces and their Calorian allies stood together, battered but unbroken. The Exerthans had come with the full force of their technology, believing they were unstoppable, but humanity had proven them wrong. In the end, it wasn't the technology or the sheer power of the weapons that won the battle. It was the heart, the drive, and the spirit of those who refused to give up. Humanity had faced the impossible and turned the tide of war, proving that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the human spirit could not be broken. And as Lieutenant Marcus Kane looked out over the battlefield, he knew that this victory would be remembered forever, not just as a triumph of weapons, but as a testament to the strength of the human will. The day of reckoning had arrived. The final battle was about to begin. It wasn't just another skirmish. It was the culmination of everything the humans and Calorians had fought for. After days of hard-fought battles, after so much loss and sacrifice, this was the moment that would determine the fate of the galaxy. The humans were going to strike the final blow at the heart of the Xerthan Empire, their mothership. The Xerthan mothership, a massive and imposing vessel, loomed in the distance. It was a symbol of the Xerthans' power and cruelty, a place where countless species had been oppressed, tortured, and destroyed over the centuries. It had been the center of their control, their weapon of destruction, and now it was the target of humanity's wrath. The Exerthans had underestimated the humans, but now they would face the full force of their resolve. Explosions rocked the battlefield as humans and Calorians launched their final assault. The sky above was filled with blinding flashes of light, and the air crackled with the energy of battle. Ships, fighter jets, and weapons clashed in the heavens. The Calorians, with their superior flying skills and advanced technology, tore through the skies, engaging the last remaining Xerthan warships. They were relentless, pushing forward without hesitation, knowing that the humans were depending on them to clear the way for the final assault. Below, the ground shook as the venomous task force advanced toward the mothership. The humans, cloaked in stealth, had infiltrated the Xerthan forces, and now, with the final push at hand, they were ready to make their move. Lieutenant Marcus Kane, his face steely and determined, led his squad toward the mothership's boarding docks. His mission was clear: board the ship, destroy its core, and end the Xerthans' reign of terror once and for all. As they approached the ship, Marcus's comms crackled to life. "All units, prepare for close-quarters combat. We're boarding now," he said, his voice firm. His heart raced, but his resolve never wavered. His team followed closely behind, their venomous weapons ready. These weapons, bioengineered to target the biological weaknesses of the Xerthans, had proven devastating. But now it was time for a different kind of fight: hand-to-hand combat in the heart of the enemy ship. The boarding ramp descended, and the human soldiers poured onto the mothership. The dark, metallic corridors of the ship seemed to close in around them. The air was thick with tension. As they moved forward, the doors slid open, revealing the first wave of Xerthan soldiers. The enemy was ready, but they were not prepared for what was coming. Lieutenant Marcus was the first to engage. His cloaking device was still active, but he didn't need it now. The humans were past that. They were no longer relying solely on technology. They had the raw courage and the unyielding will to win. Marcus charged forward, his blade drawn, cutting down a Xerthan soldier who didn't even see him coming. Behind him, his team followed suit, taking down the enemy with deadly precision. But these weren't just regular soldiers. They were commanders, elite forces of the Xerthan Empire. They fought hard, but the humans fought harder. Each blow, each strike was a symbol of the battle they had endured, the sacrifices they had made. The Xerthans fought back with viciousness, but their aggression couldn't match the determination that burned in the hearts of the humans. This was personal now. This was for Bonner, for every soldier they had lost. But the true twist of the battle was still to come. In the heart of the mothership at the control center, The AI-controlled battle drones that had once served the Exerthans loyally began to malfunction. These drones were powerful and efficient, programmed to follow their master's commands without question. They had been the perfect soldiers, wiping out entire civilizations with no mercy. But now, the humans' venomous agents were starting to take effect. The bioengineered toxins that had already crippled the Exerthans' biological systems were now infecting the drone's programming. It started slowly at first, small glitches in the drone's behavior. But as the toxins spread, the drones began to turn against their creators. One by one, they stopped obeying commands. They started attacking Exerthan soldiers. The Exerthans, who had once relied on these machines for their dominance, were now facing their own creations as enemies. It was a moment of poetic justice. The machines that had once oppressed countless species now became the agents of their creators' downfall. The Exerthan commanders, already stretched thin from fighting the human forces, were caught off guard. Panic spread among their ranks as their most powerful weapons turned against them. The AI drones began to open fire on everything in sight, targeting Exerthan soldiers as well as humans. It was chaos, an all-out battle between the humans, the Calorians, the Exerthans, and their own creations. Marcus and his team continued their assault on the mothership's core. The battle had reached its climax. With every step, they got closer to their goal. The walls of the ship were alive with explosions, the air thick with the acrid smell of burning metal. The once mighty Exerthan mothership was now a death trap, its own machines working against it. As they reached the central control room, Marcus found himself face to face with the Exerthan commander, the last of their high-ranking leaders. The final showdown was upon them. The commander, a towering figure, snarled as he unsheathed his weapon, a blade as dark and twisted as his soul. The two men circled each other, eyes locked in a battle of wills. The commander was strong, but Marcus was faster. He struck first, his blade cutting through the air, but the Exerthan leader blocked it with ease. Their battle was intense, a blur of strikes and counterattacks. Every moment felt like it could be their last. But Marcus knew what had to be done. With a final powerful strike, he disarmed the Exerthan commander and delivered the fatal blow. The Exerthan leader fell to the ground, his reign of terror finally over. As the commander's body hit the floor, the rest of the Exerthan forces began to crumble. Their warships were falling from the sky, their AI drones now attacking indiscriminately. The empire that had once dominated the galaxy was now on the brink of collapse. It was over. The humans had won, but the cost had been great. Marcus stood over the commander's body, panting, bloodied but unbroken. His heart was heavy, but there was a sense of peace that washed over him. This victory was hard-earned, but it was one that would be remembered forever. "We did it," Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible over the chaos that still raged around him. His team gathered around him, their faces weary but proud. They had done the impossible. The Exerthans had been defeated, their empire shattered. The galaxy was free. As the last of the Exerthan ships fell from the sky, the battle was finally over. The humans and their Calorian allies stood victorious, having conquered the impossible. The Exerthan Empire had been brought to its knees. Its cruel reign of terror ended forever. But Marcus knew this wasn't just a victory for humanity. It was a victory for every species that had suffered under the Exerthan's rule. The galaxy had been given a chance to rebuild, and humanity had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, they could rise up and make a difference. The final battle had been fought, the final blow delivered. And as the dust settled, the humans stood as the new guardians of the galaxy. The dust of battle had barely settled when Lieutenant Marcus and his team stood before the burning wreckage of the Exerthan mothership. The victory was theirs. The might of the Exerthan Empire, which had seemed invincible only days before, was now reduced to nothing more than smoldering ruins. The air, once thick with the acrid smell of war, now carried a strange sense of calm. An uncertain calm, as though the galaxy itself was holding its breath. The war was over, but the consequences would be felt for generations to come. The humans had done it. They had taken on a far superior enemy and defeated them. Their victory was a testament to their resilience, courage, and strength. But as the reality of the win set in, Lieutenant Marcus found himself standing alone for a brief moment, his eyes cast downward, lost in thought. He had fought hard, but the cost had been staggering. The loss of so many brave soldiers, including his dear friend Bonner, weighed heavily on him. The memory of Bonner's sacrifice, the final piece of intel that had turned the tide of battle, was etched into his mind. The pain of losing him would never go away. For a brief moment, Marcus closed his eyes and let the quiet of the moment surround him. The victory was sweet, but it was bittersweet. The pain of loss never truly disappeared, but it was now mingled with the pride of knowing they had saved the galaxy, and they had done it together. Humans and Calorians, once bitter enemies, now allies in the truest sense of the word. It wasn't just the human soldiers who had fought and bled for this victory. The Calorians had fought beside them, their advanced ships and technology lending their strength to the humans' efforts. The Calorians, who had once looked down on humanity as weak and primitive, now saw them as powerful allies, worthy of respect and admiration. The humans had proven their worth on the battlefield, but more than that, they had proven the power of unity, determination, and the will to survive. As the first Calorian survivors made their way to the battlefield, their eyes filled with awe and respect for the humans who had saved them. They exchanged solemn glances with the soldiers who had stood by them. It was a new beginning for both species. A bond had been forged in the fires of war, and now it would grow stronger as they worked together to rebuild. The Calorians, who had once regarded humanity with disdain, were now looking at them through different eyes. There was no longer any doubt in their minds. The humans were no longer the underdogs, no longer the weaklings who had no place among the stars. They had risen up and claimed their place as leaders of the galaxy. The humans had proven that they were capable of more than just survival. They were capable of triumph. The victory was not just a victory for humanity. It was a victory for every species that had been oppressed by the Exerthans. The Calorians, who had once been enslaved by the Exerthans, now found themselves in a position of strength. With the help of their new human allies, they began to rebuild their cities, their homes, and their way of life. The devastation that had once threatened to wipe them out was now beginning to fade into the past. The image of a peaceful Calorian city, rebuilt with the help of human engineers, became the symbol of this new era. The tall, sleek buildings that once stood as monuments to Xerthan oppression were now being replaced with vibrant, modern structures. Streets that had once been filled with fear and uncertainty were now bustling with life, as humans and Calorians worked side by side to create something new. The humans, once seen as primitive and unworthy of a place among the stars, were now recognized as equals. They were no longer just survivors. They were leaders, strategists, and warriors who had proven their strength and resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. Their reputation spread throughout the galaxy, and their influence grew with each passing day. The Exerthan Empire may have been destroyed, but in its place, something even stronger had emerged: the alliance between humans and Calorians. Marcus walked through the bustling streets of the new Calorian city, his thoughts still heavy with the loss of his comrades. He had led his team through the toughest battles, but the hardest battle was the one that took place within. The ghosts of those they had lost still haunted him, but he knew they hadn't died in vain. The galaxy was safer now, thanks to their sacrifice. His team, those who had survived, walked beside him, their faces weary but filled with pride. They had done it. They had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. But there was no time to rest. The future was uncertain, and there was still much work to be done. The humans had earned their place in the galaxy, but it was a place they would have to continue earning every day. The fight for peace was never truly over, but Marcus knew they were ready for whatever came next. The Calorians had built a monument to honor the fallen, a place where both human and Calorian soldiers would be remembered for their bravery. The names of the fallen were etched into the stone, their faces immortalized in the memories of those who survived. Bonner's name was among them, and Marcus couldn't help but stop for a moment to pay his respects. It was a quiet moment, a moment of reflection before the next chapter began. As the sun began to set over the newly rebuilt city, Marcus stood there, looking out at the horizon. The sky was clear, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like hope was finally possible. The Calorians and the humans had forged something truly special, an alliance born from the ashes of war, a future built on mutual respect and understanding. There would be challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long time, Marcus felt ready to face them. The humans had proven their worth, and now, the galaxy would never be the same again. In the distance, a group of Calorians and humans stood together, looking up at the sky, watching the first stars of the night appear. They were no longer just two species. They were partners, comrades, and friends. Together, they would rebuild what had been lost and forge a new future for themselves and the galaxy. The Exerthons were gone. Their empire was shattered. But from their ashes, something new had emerged, something powerful. And as Marcus stood there, surrounded by his team and his new allies, he knew that this was just the beginning. The galaxy had been saved, and the future was bright. The humans had proven they were not the weak, primitive race that Exerthons had believed them to be. They were something far greater. They were a force to be reckoned with. They were the future. And with that, Marcus smiled, knowing that the best was yet to come.